Hello. How is everybody? How's everybody today? So, what we're doing, let's see. Can I see myself here? So, can everybody hear me and see me? It seems okay so far. If so, please give me the thumbs up or give me a comment. We are live. So, let's hope that my audio and video are coming through okay. Right. Hello and welcome for joining me, everyone, today. We're streaming on multiple platforms, as I can see on my screen over here. So please leave any questions or comments below, and I would like to, have an interactive session as much as possible. So I'd love this session to be as interactive as possible. And again, if you could help me and let me know if the audio and video is coming through okay, give me the thumbs up or just comment in the comment section for me and let me know, please. So, who's watching me and where are you joining me from? And we will give it a few seconds for more people to join us. And hopefully, today we won't go over an hour, but I've got a lot to share about today's topic. So, we'll see. And as always, welcome to my live today about common mistakes people make, and engineers in particular make in interviews, and how to avoid them. Now, I'm really excited to talk about this today. We've talked about something similar before, as in preparing for the interviews, but today I would really like to hone in and focus on the mistakes that we make. Um, this is coming from hundreds of interviews. So, as an interviewer or a hiring manager, or a recruiter, or a recruiting manager, and also as a candidate in many interviews before. Can't say hundreds as a candidate, but certainly hundreds, I don't know, if not 1,000 or more, as a hiring manager, I would say. Uh, and for those who do not know me, my name is Mohammed. I work as a director of design and engineering for Aureus, a company specializing in energy construction projects. We build substations and energy connection or energy grid connections and things like that. And I've been in substation and extra high voltage substation design for over 17 years now, and done different roles in different industries in energy construction. And what I find most interesting about this topic is, from the experience I've had in my career so far, is that it really, really differs from organization to organization, from an interviewer to another, and a lot of there's a lot of intricacies and nuances, if you like. So we'll try to go through them today and see how far we can cover. And I always like to start. I mean, we're giving it a few seconds for people to join, more people to join. I can see some joining. Hello. And I always like to share about my week. It's been a relatively sunny week. And it started, with a bank holiday for Easter. So happy Easter to everybody. I hope everybody had a good Easter. But at the same time, there has been a lot of work going on this week, and we've been very busy. We are recruiting again. Our energy design team is growing again, which is good. So we've been very busy, and lots of events, lots of meetings, and work happening, and discussions. Good, always good discussions around projects and around activities that we are delivering and design and engineering. So, what about you? Tell me about your day and your week. How's it been going for you? And look, if you've worked on something interesting this week and care to share with us, please let me know in the comments. And people sometimes, or a lot of people ask me, why am I doing these lives? This is live number 14, I believe, which is really good. To start with, I like to share the knowledge. If, it helps even one person, that would be really, really a source of joy for me. And I believe that more people should be doing this. We need to spread the knowledge and we need to learn from others. I could certainly use learning from someone, definitely. I'm always looking to learn from others, which is great. And this is one of the great things about LinkedIn, no matter how cringe we believe it is. But this is one of the good things about LinkedIn is to learn from other people. And this is, where I sit down and just have like an informal chat with anybody who cares to listen out there. And I get a lot of good feedback. And it is also my number one source of personal growth at the moment. To learn what's happening out there, to learn from others. And there is brilliant people that I follow that post very interesting stuff. And I want to see how we're all or live, how we're all developing as an industry. And I also want to push myself and learn from others as well. And, you know, public speaking needs regular practicing, and that's hopefully what I'm trying to do. And if you're joining me live, please give me the thumbs up, okay, so I can tell you what project I'm working on at the moment. It's kind of like a side project, if you like, which I'm working on for my newsletter readers. Um, those who have been following my journey have seen that I've written and published daily on LinkedIn for a couple of years now, almost, just approaching 2 years ago. And apparently, LinkedIn tells me my posts have generated millions of impressions and reached over 510,000 people over the last 12 months alone, which is crazy. It's really social media is something that I was never used to in this sense, but I'm always trying to push myself and trying to learn and trying to stay up to date. And the amount of opportunities it has brought or it is bringing for me is just mad. But what I'm most interested in is connecting with other interesting people, specifically engineers working on interesting projects. And as always, if you want to access my content, you will find all of it on Substack, all the videos, all the articles, the resources, the downloadable stuff. So it's all good stuff. And I'm currently working on a training course, which I want to be different, or I want it to be different. There's a lot of training courses out there, but I feel that if I want to build something that is different, and I want people to give me ideas and suggestions on what has worked for them and what hasn't in the past. Sorry if I'm looking this way. I'm just looking at the screen that is showing the stream feed, so I'm just making sure that it is running and all good. Yeah. And so let me know in the comments if you're interested in the training course, and I'll send you a link to it. I've got some questions in the comments, which is good. We'll get to them now. Today, I want to talk about the most common mistakes engineers make at interviews and how to avoid them. And it is a very interesting topic, and I think it's a really exciting thing to talk about today, because I know that from hundreds of interviews, what actually could be the last, let's say, reason, that makes people stand apart or be ahead of others. And these things are really little things. I firmly believe that we should be talking about them all the time, reminding ourselves, reminding others who could benefit from it. And they're really easy to learn and apply. And although they are little things that are easy to apply and easy to learn. It's not rocket science at all. It's just a matter of knowing what to focus on and when and how. So, although they are really easy to learn and apply, not everybody's doing them. And although they're simple, they can make a huge difference. I've seen them make huge differences. Some people who focus on the right things can come across brilliantly, while others who might be ahead technically, I would say, can struggle a bit more. So, this is where I want to make sure that the people who need this kind of information can access it easily and can find it, and can we need to make this kind of information more and more accessible for everybody. And if you get to know these things, you can focus on these little or small actions that could make a difference and take you closer to your goals. We will attempt to shed light or more light on some of these aspects. We're not going to be able to cover everything. So if you have questions, please let me know. If you have specific, things that you're struggling with, you can send to me or write to me in the comments. And of course, I've seen many engineers, let's say, miss on opportunities because of these little things, unfortunately. So let's discuss about these skills today and learn them and try to apply whatever we could. I would always advise to take, um, things a little bit at a time, or, in very small parts and portions that we could apply easily. And today we're mainly talking, well, we could be talking to anybody really, and we're mainly talking to a number of people that I'm interested to get the message out to, and be sure that they learn about this kind of information and hopefully find it helpful. So first of all, the engineers who do not know how to prepare for an interview, and those are people who could feel they don't know where to start or whether they are doing the right, let's say, things or not. So that's a matter of knowledge. And they don't know how to, or they could have less time, or, they could be new. But if you learn how to prepare, then you will also know what could work and what doesn't work. And with hopefully some practice and trial and error, you will find your way. You got to find, as an engineer, as a person, you need to find what works for you. And that's always a personal thing. And this is where, when I speak to engineers, or some of the engineers come and tell me, oh, we're struggling with this thing, and we start always with a self, discovery step. You have to learn about yourself. You learn how to prepare. Then you also know what works and what doesn't. Because without this knowledge, you're kind of in the dark, if that makes sense. And learning these little things, noting them down, as I said, and applying them in small steps in the next interviews can give you an idea, and you will get an idea on how to best prepare for interviews from that. And you will also find, as I said, you'll find the things that you believe worked and hasn't worked. So that's a matter of becoming more aware while you go through the interviews. That's very important. And I'm also interested in talking with engineers who are not successful with interviews, who find, let's say, who might struggle, okay, who don't necessarily, or feel that they don't necessarily find success. And then more annoyingly, they don't know what or did not, or what hasn't, or what doesn't or didn't work for them. And they might face the obstacles of actually not knowing how to approach when they are not successful, or not particularly, landing the opportunity that they were looking for. So on the other side, having the right mindset, skills, and experience, which hopefully you will pick up learning during these processes, will help you formulate a more successful approach. And as I said, it starts with preparation. We've talked about that before. But at the same time, it's also about as we said, and repeating, knowing what works for you and what doesn't. And knowledge can make a huge difference. I've seen it make a huge difference. People who, and there's a lot of things that, one can learn in different circumstances, in different industries, in different jobs. The more successful people definitely know more. That's definitely the case. Even if they don't recognize it, that's usually the case. So if you're measuring success by landing opportunities, then it is a matter of knowledge, and it is a matter of experience, of course. And experience is usually led by knowledge. You gain experience easily with the right knowledge. So learning what to note from your or for your interview and work on it for the next one and the next time. So that's also something um, that is of importance. If you iterate on what didn't work and make it work, or what works and expand on that and using it again, you will eventually find your way and you will become more successful. That's for sure. And another area, I can see questions, so thank you very much. I will answer them in a bit. So just stick around, please. Bear with me while I finish this couple of segments. Um, so engineers who are new to interviewing, some of us, graduate and we don't know what mistakes people can make. Being new, there's a lot of experience out there that we do not have, or we do not necessarily have yet, and that could be of use to us, but we don't necessarily have it yet, and that's very, very normal. That's totally normal. And by learning, you can easily set yourself apart. It's very easy. It's very easy, especially for entry level engineers. You can easily set yourself apart because most of the people won't have, you know, what makes them, let's say, miles ahead of others. So it's easy to differentiate yourself if you apply the small things that we're going to talk about. And they don't teach this in universities and schools. I mean, I remember from university we did have a few courses around things related to these subjects, but actually, as a matter of fact, it does differ from industry to industry. So not just from today. Today we're talking about substations, and or maybe from with people from substations background like myself. But in other industries, nonetheless, it does apply. And find the relevant people ahead of you, even if they are only a couple of steps ahead of you. It doesn't have to be somebody who's um, a department head or whatever, but always find somebody who's even at least a two steps ahead of you and ask them direct questions. That's what I used to do, and I still do. On a daily basis. I go to somebody who knows, or I think knows something I don't, and ask them a direct question about that. And it's a constant learning process. That's what I enjoy, and I think was helpful the most for me. And I advise you to do the same. And you'll easily pick up the necessary knowledge. Being an entry level engineer, that's for sure. And of course, it's not just those three sets of engineers. Everyone will benefit from learning about interviews. And most of us may think we don't or won't ever need to prepare or know or learn about interviews, but you never know. It can become handy one day, you never know. And it can make the difference between a good opportunity and or landing the best opportunity. And it can also make a difference between being successful and not. So always keep learning and updating your knowledge on the new techniques. I'll tell you an example. I once in the past went into like what seemed to be like a psychometric test and a pattern, test. And nowadays I know that they do AI interviews and pre-recorded video interviews and all sorts. So it's a strange world out there, I know. But look, staying up to date is important, and it will help you again learn about the interviews, rehearse for them, practice the new techniques, and that always gives you an edge and always increases your chances of being successful as an engineer. So, and that's part of being, let's say, more employable, if you like. This is a skill that is now becoming more and more relevant. So I'll get to the questions, but I'll finish this segment first, if that's all right. Um, let's focus on or try or start with the things that people ignore that I think are important. And these are the first set of mistakes that people make with regards to interviews. And the first one is a mistake that I've seen in the past, and actually I've done it once in the past, and I was a bit lucky to get away with it, but it was something that happened to me many years ago. So treating internal interviews as external interviews. Now let's first explain for those who do not know, or explain and remind ourselves what is an internal review. An internal review is basically um, an interview within the same organization that you are within, and is usually for a promotion or um, lateral move, or even within the same department or across departments. So it is an interview with somebody who probably knows you and you probably know them. And that's a big difference. So, not knowing the specific things about these different types of interviews, or the requirements of an internal interview versus an external interview, can be sometimes at the detriment of how you perform during that interview. And if you know, or if you learn about the internal interviews and what they need in contrast to the external interviews, I mean, they are quite similar on many levels, but internal interviews, you know, are probably, in most cases, as I said, carried out by somebody who knows you. So if you are going to mention something, it's going to have to be something that is not disputable, as simple as that. Um, you will appear more focused and trustworthy if you focus on, or if you um, basically highlight the stuff that are required to give the right impression of being reliable in that internal interview. So the three things basically are usually, I think, easier to handle than an external interview, but also challenging because people, are usually in the autopilot mode. We don't usually, in our day-to-day operations, we're not thinking of a lot of the things that might be asked of us in those kind of internal interviews. So that's very important. So always adopt the company perspective and try to think from a company point of view. How are you better utilized in that new role compared to your current role? And how, or what good change would you bring with this move? And as I said, the evidence has to be undisputable, because this is somebody who knows you, who probably has seen you on a day-to-day basis, and has seen how you interact. So try to pick the right examples, the examples that made, positive ripples through the organization, and try to see how you're already showing commitment and leadership and engagement, or high engagement traits. These are very, very important things to focus on. And of course, it will definitely show through. Once you prepare for these things and you do not, or avoid making the mistake of treating this as an external interview where you just go in and answer questions, this will add a kind of flair to you as a profile or as a candidate, internal candidate, and will set you apart of others. So think about engagement, within the company. How do you align with the company values that you have already in place? I would think about the biggest problems that interviewer is facing in the current organization and try to find or propose solutions that I could bring as part of that transition, if that is, you know, realistic and doable. And remember not to overcommit, because that would hurt your future prospects as well. Okay. When I say, when you get into something saying that you can do it and then you struggle, it does weaken, your chances for the next time. That's just for sure. And we are always, as I always tell the engineers I speak with, treat this as a long-term engagement, treat this as a long-term, thing. Your career is not just 12 months or 18 months. We're talking about many, many years, hopefully. So that's what I have to say about internal interviews. I have probably 3 experiences with internal interviews, which were all successful, luckily. But one of them did leave me with, some thoughts and some, let's say, um, massive learnings. And hopefully one day I'll talk about that. If you want me to cover that in a future, let's say, training, let me know in the comments, please. Okay, so the next thing or important thing people ignore is actually um, getting into a screening interview thinking it is a same kind of interview as a technical one. So it's a different kind of interview. Usually it's only HR related questions. And usually they are focusing on the softer skills type of things, on your character, on your profile as a person, and your, you know, approach as a team player. So again, walking into it thinking it's the same as a technical interview is a big mistake. And a lot of people do that. But knowing that it is, or recognizing and preparing for it as a different kind of interview, will make you focus more on the related questions, will also, avoid you making the mistake of entering into that detailed tech. Now, I'm talking to engineers, so avoid getting into that deep technical mode, which can confuse the recruiter. Because usually it's led by HR, it's led by a recruiter, or maybe perhaps the same technical person, but they would be more interested in the, softer skills side of things. Okay. And I don't need to cover this now. We can talk about it later, but there are tons and hundreds, if not thousands, of practice questions out there. And that's a good thing. People don't practice, but we'll get to that. That's another mistake that we're going to talk about today. But again, if you are entering into a screening um, interview, you can always research those questions and rehearse and practice answering them. And, they are usually related to pattern recognition, thinking clearly and quickly under pressure, psychometric reactions. So, all these sort of good things. And you can tick the different boxes if you actually give dedicated time and, thinking or thought to the screening interviews, or preparing for the screening interviews. And, you know, you need to do it differently. That's the main thing. And that's the mistake that people, make. Okay. So if you go into an HR or a screening interview and talk about details or technical details, you're not doing yourself a favor. Try more to focus on things that articulate clear communication, and or very, very, or come across as, clear, confident, eager to learn, committed, have a sense of ownership, a good team player, somebody who's easy to work with. These are all traits to focus on for the screening interviews. And of course, knowing, and this is the third mistake we're talking about, which is knowing a technical versus non-technical. We talked about the non-technical, which is the screening. But for the technical, on the other hand, you got to prepare yourself. And I'll tell you two main mistakes I see people losing on opportunities, not because they're not good or they haven't got the experience. They've got the experience, they've got the skill set, they've got the knowledge, but they lose on opportunities because of those two things. One, they don't prepare clear examples that show their achievements and articulate their experience in the best way possible. And two, they stop short. Okay? Stopping short is not a good thing. You got to carry on as long as you're, asked and given the time. Just please carry on. explain it to, I'm talking about technical interviews, I'm talking about engineers in technical interviews. Make sure you get into the right level of detail. Otherwise, you will never exhibit competence or experience. You have to know what is the right level of detail. And that depends on a number of things. Of course, you got your job description and you know what are the main aspects in the job description. This is common stuff. Everybody knows this, but I'll explain it again. Take the job description and basically list out the main aspects or points and prepare from your experience and from your skill set and knowledge and profile as a candidate what actually matches those important aspects of the job description. And one mistake is people try to basically talk about everything. Do not talk about everything. You gotta get into the right level of detail on each item you pick to talk about. And my advice would be to pick whatever is relevant, whatever is most important. If you are applying, let's say, as a design engineer, and if you're applying as a design engineer, let's say, so you need to focus on the deliverables that you can independently produce, and you gotta talk about, let's say, or you could list them very clearly from previous projects, referring those projects, maybe talking about the challenges that you met, being also ready and able to describe the exact process and thought process you go through to produce such a deliverable. What kind of inputs does your deliverable rely on? What kind of interfaces do you manage as part of, designing that aspect of the system or that product or whatever? So this is how you exhibit the competence and experience. And you do that by simply just spending enough time before the interview and preparing your answers. We talk about the what, the why, and the how, okay, or the situation, the task, and the action and the result, or the problem and the solution and the result, okay? Let's say challenge and solution and the result. So there are many, many frameworks out there that could help you put structure on your message and help you craft a harmonized, message. Okay, so prepare for each point in the job description and the important aspects in the job description, not every point, but maybe the relevant ones, the main ones. And those who prepare more and better are always more successful. They always rank better. Trust me on that. I've seen it hundreds of times. Those who can just hit the right tone and the right, they're on the same bandwidth with the interviewer and they can just, they can kill it. They can just basically get in there, say the right things. And there is not usually one single right thing to say. There are many right things that you could say, and that's the challenging bit. That most people get in there, even though they know what they should be talking about, or they know the stuff that they have worked on as engineers for many, many years by heart. They still struggle to articulate about it properly, and that's the problem. It's not a problem of competence or qualification or knowledge or technical aspects. It's a matter of articulation. Okay, and the last thing, or one more mistake, is actually adopting the same tone for the different, or the same approach for the different stages of an interview, and that's a big mistake. When you're beginning in the interview, and we're going to talk and cover about the different stages, but when you're introducing yourself, you probably, in my opinion, I would do it anyway, but I would script that intro word by word, okay? And I would memorize it by heart, Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity. My name is Mohammed. I'm an electrical engineer. I graduated in this and that from this and that. I've been working in this and that. And you need to focus in the beginning on, again, the quick wins. What sets you apart as an engineer? Okay. What could make you the strongest candidate here? Let me give you some examples. If you are, again, applying as a commissioning engineer, well, maybe you could just quickly, mention the big projects you worked on. Okay. and the volume of works, how many panels, how many bays, voltage levels, just really, really quickly. Um, we will talk about powerful or power words. We need to be using more of these power words, and I promise you, I will do a training about this. That's, I think, the first training I'm going to do. So, how to use power words, because people struggle with those either in CVs, in interviews, an application for professional registration. So people, engineers, we struggle to talk about our experience and about our skill set because in many ways, we are introverts, and it's kind of like counterintuitive for us to talk about our achievements. I know. And look, we got to learn that. If you want the best opportunities, you got to learn how to, overcome that ick, if you like. So when you are, let's say, in the beginning, and in the very first stage is different to the middle stage of the interview, is different to the final stage of the interview. So not recognizing the differences between these different stages, can be a huge obstacle, because then you risk being uh, monotonous, at the same like tone. That's not natural, again, on a subconscious level for the interviewer. Um, in the beginning, I would rather the intro being scripted and learned by heart, so that, you gain that first 5 minutes of confidence, of flow, and then you are comfortably into it. But if you kind of, you know, struggle in the first 5 minutes, it might increase your nervousness. So I would really, really um, advise you to think about the different stages of the interview and prepare for them differently, because each stage will have its own requirements and intricacies, if you like, and also modes. And yeah, one thing to remember about, well, we'll talk about the first and the different stages later. Remind me, please, in the comments to mention how to, ace that intro in the beginning. Please remind me. Just tell me in the comments, and I'll hopefully not forget today. Okay, because it's in a few segments. And during job application, your first impression, your first contact with the recruiter, these are all important impressions. So always nail them, please. And it's easy to nail them, and it will definitely show through, that level of preparation, and it will add a kind of like, special, um, let's say, edge to you as a candidate. Okay. What I would do now is see the comments from the chat, and let's see. Watching from Reading, UK. Very good. Welcome. I go to Reading quite a lot, actually. I've been going to Reading quite a lot over the years. So let me know if you're still watching. I'll take your question now. I got final interviews at a couple of weeks ago at, I will not name the companies if you wouldn't mind, but unfortunately I didn't make it to a single offer. I want to learn how to crack final interviews and shining the process, as this feels so disheartening as a graduate. I feel you. Mm. It can be disheartening, of course. I feel that, look, are you still with us? Are you still watching? Tell me in the comments. But look, first of all, it's normal to be disheartened. You worked hard, you studied, for a few years hard, and, you know, not finding success can be, can feel brutal, to be fair. And sometimes it's just a matter of timing. And it's really difficult and challenging to nail where is it falling short for you. So perhaps maybe, you need to speak to a mentor or somebody who is in your industry with the right level of experience. How to nail or how to crack the final interviews? I think it's just a matter of time. If you are finding yourself going through interviews and only, let's say, not making it on the final interview, well, first of all, try to get feedback, try to find and ask about feedback, and try to get any learnings from that. It could be a matter of practicing. So try to always write down the questions that you got asked during the interview, and especially the ones that you struggled with, because that's how I approach it with engineers who speak with me. So some of the graduates who speak well, they're not really graduates, but maybe with few years experience, and they tell me, oh, we didn't make it. Oh, and I say, okay, well, let's go through the interview. What questions were you asked? And they would list the questions. And in some cases, they wouldn't know whether their answers were adequate enough or not. But in most cases, they would tell me that they didn't do well because of that specific question. So they would know already. And that's where I think it can make a difference for you. Um, you you need to get to a stage where you understand where it falls short for you first. And sometimes if there is no answer, then it is what it is. I'm telling you, sometimes it's just a matter of timing, it's just a matter of luck, but you need to continue trying. It's a tough one, I know, but you could only work on what you can control, which is not, you can be disheartened, of course, but then deal with that feeling quickly and move on. You need to try again. You need to work on yourself. You need to learn more and more. Just don't let it stop you. Otherwise, and it's only a matter of time then. How can we talk, communicate, or reach out to you? So at the moment, I'm not taking any coaching or private coaching calls, unfortunately, because of work and because of being busy on a number of things. However, I am still contactable. You can send me on LinkedIn. If you have questions, please send me questions on LinkedIn. No problem at all. 99% of the time, I will answer them because I am interested in questions and in answering and in finding out what people are struggling with, and in finding out how can I help more people. This is really something that helps me as well. So please send me your questions anytime. You can DM me or comment your questions anywhere. However, please note that LinkedIn does not inform me when you comment a question. So you have to tag me or just message me. Let's see. Another question says, I'm currently pursuing my master's. What are the companies or internships that I should target since I could only work part-time due to my visa? Okay, that's a good question. I think the big companies, so in electronics, I'm not sure in electronics, but in electrical engineering, a lot of the companies will welcome and will actually appreciate having somebody who could do maybe part-time placements with them. A lot of companies out there are doing it. So it's about, if you are in doing your master's, yeah, okay. So I would say start networking with hiring managers who are looking for people like you, so who are looking for fresh graduates, and especially early career managers. Okay, you can easily search on LinkedIn now. Just write, yeah, let's say the top 5 or 10 companies in your industry. Just write the company name, or you can write early careers manager and search for that, for those people, and then filter by company. You'll find those people and message them, very politely, very respect people's privacy, respect people's time, and give people time as well to process the message and answer you if they are interested in answering it, and follow up again politely, professionally. But what you could basically do is basically network with these people, message them, say, look, I'm looking for an internship, whether it's paid or not paid, it's up to you what you set. But usually I think it will be paid And you could then ask them whether they have opportunities for you. And when you're doing that, try to highlight what that would benefit the company as you. So please avoid, there's something you know, bothering me, and people waste their opportunities because of this. People use standard copy paste messages. Don't do that, please. It comes across as very lazy and, frankly, you know, not professional at all. So, spend time, learn how to write a personalized and polite and professional message. Okay, personalized to your circumstance and to your skill set and experience and your profile as a candidate. And I'll tell you that when I get a serious message that is actually meaningful, I will take action. I will respond. I will look at the CV. I will always look at the candidate's profile to see if this is somebody we would be interested in interviewing. Why not? Yeah, we're always looking out for good people, and that's how you find good people. It's one of the many ways you find good people. So, but if somebody sends us like a copy paste, standard message that says, I'm excited to, the AI generated stuff is like rocket emojis and excitement and all that. Well, I'm sorry, it won't get you far. I mean, it doesn't work. And then before you know it, you just, I mean, do you really want to respond to a message like that if you send one like that yourself? Perhaps not. Anyway, good luck. And I'm sure that you'll find a good opportunity. The market is booming in energy, and I'm not sure about electronics. I don't know which part, but if it's power electronics, you've got HVDC companies, facts companies, battery energy storage. There's lots out there. How to tackle sponsorship questions for graduate roles? How to tackle? I don't know. Um, I am a graduate seeking electrical engineering. Okay, you answer the questions honestly and openly. Very simple. Especially around like sponsorship and all that. These are legal matters that I am in no place to advise you on. But at the same time, all I can tell you is be honest, be open, be very clear, because the companies who are sponsoring people will be willing to sponsor people, and the companies who cannot will just simply say no. It's just as simple as that. So be honest and don't, burn your opportunities, please. Being nobody will want to hire somebody who comes across as dishonest. So please be careful. All right. Okay. Another mistake. So back to mistakes, and keep the questions coming, please. So another mistake people do before the interviews is they need to be aware of the most relevant and interesting parts of their CVs. Common, common mistake. I ask somebody something from their CV and they're like surprised. You know, what? What do you mean? What? It's in your CV. I've asked you something honestly, word for word from the CV that you have supposedly written and um, applied for the job with. So you are probably going to be asked from your CV. So know your CV, know the important parts of your CV, prepare examples. Look, there is nothing wrong with actually, I'll say it with me. I mean, if I'm interviewing somebody, I have no problem in people reading from, written notes. I don't think I mind it. I don't mind it. Okay. Unless they're just basically looking at the paper. But if you have like, we all struggle with memory. We all need visual cues and reminders and stuff to look at and talk. That's normal, not a problem. So there is no way to predict the future. You might think you won't be able to know which parts of your CVs are relevant, but knowing this will enable you to answer quickly. And it will, make you more organized. And this can all come across very well in the interview. So think about what we said before, the job description and your CV. What are the main aspects of the job? What areas have you had the biggest responsibilities and achievements and achieved results in. Then try to write them down. And again, as we said, there's a lot of frameworks out there that you could use to structure your answer, and then just talk about them. Now, it might sound unnatural the first time, maybe, but with more and more practice before the interview, it will actually flow. And that will even give you, let's say, more. I don't know how to describe it, but flow is the right word. Google the flow state is where you are basically just flowing with the conversation and the ideas and your answers. And it will make you come across as very confident and very competent. And that's something that is very, very good for your prospects as a candidate. So remember that mistake, okay? I apply with my CV, but then I forget what's in the CV. No, be aware of the CV, okay? Right, and the second thing is your cover letter or your engagement with the recruiter. Now, some people don't like cover letters, and there's a lot of opinions out there about cover letters, whether they are relevant, not relevant, needed, not needed. Okay. What I can tell you is a short answer: cover letters can set you apart. They are, think of it, it's just another free opportunity for you to perhaps put something in that can be personalized, can be targeted, focused, and can again set you apart and leave a memorable impression about you as a candidate. So this is your first engagement with the recruiter, whether it's the cover letter or whether it's a message or an email or the application note or comment, whatever it is, including your cover letter as well. But that first engagement is, people might think that it's too much hard work, or 99% of people might think it takes more time, or they don't know how to do it, or even worse, they might not think it would make a big difference anyway. But recruiters will always mention and always highlight the positive first impression if they had one. Okay, so if they had a positive impression of you, that will stay with them. Now again, I don't want people to think, oh, I gotta leave it. No, if you don't leave that positive impression, fine. There is still opportunity. Okay, most people will remember. Um, most people will remember the different human and interesting touches. It's just simple. It's just psychological. And think of something relevant that sets you apart, relevant to the role. What's an interesting, strong and relevant story about you? The way you come up with, just the way you come up with a good icebreaker can leave, as I said, a lasting impression, okay, and can set you apart from the competition. And another mistake people make is practicing, which is basically, the clue's in the name, really, but it's basically people trying to sit before the interview and think of how to prepare and practice and rehearse for the interview. Now, a lot of people might think this is not useful. Fine. A lot of people might think not to know how, but I can tell you it is useful. It's very easy to do. There's lots of sites and apps and stuff out there to help you with that. So, practicing, I would say, is 80% or 90% of the game. Well, let's not take it that far. Let's say 75%. Okay. So it does increase your chances of success. This is very important. People who practice can come across as confident. They can come across as professional, more professional. They can come across as more competent. I could go on. Okay. And to do that, as we said, you look at the job description, main aspects, or the main aspects that are expected to be asked. And you could always also ask the HR and the recruiting manager before the interview. If they're okay with it, they're gonna give you answers. If not, they're gonna keep it level and say no. Yeah. So, look, there's no harm in asking what kind of questions are expected. What kind of points are we expected to talk about, so I can prepare myself. And actually, asking makes you come across also as more eager, more keen, more involved, more engaged. So remember to, as we said, look at the job description and prepare the relevant structured examples. Ask the recruiter and practice and rehearse the answers. Now, you could do that in a different ways. People might record themselves on their phones, read out or practice the question and answer to themselves in the mirror or on the camera of your mobile phone, or speaking to a mentor. So there are many ways that people could do it, but doing that will only help you. So maybe that is something that you could work on if you're not finding a lot of success in interviews. And that's a mistake that people make. They don't prepare. Maybe because they're too confident. And we talk about confidence, but confidence is a very good thing. But too much confidence is not a good thing, I would say, because it does stop you from preparing properly. So, um, a little bit of stress and, let's say, a little bit of self doubt is good, because it will be an incentive or a driver to work harder and prepare more and more. And another mistake people make is not looking after their appearances, the logistics. Some people, I heard of people who got interviewed while, apparently basically lying down. And I mean, there's no medical reason for that. It's not really a professional thing to do, unless, of course, they have a medical reason. I mean, that's acceptable then. But, you gotta make sure that you come across as serious, as professional, as looking, prepared as well, with the right attire. And again, I'm in no place to advise on the right attire. I don't really mind it myself, as long as it's, professional enough. But at the same time, think about um, think about what is actually relevant to your industry. Okay. Right. Okay. Another thing we want to focus on is the mindset, having the right mindset. Okay. There is no point in getting into the interview being nervous or feeling negative or feeling down. Um, Actually, the right mindset is that you are invited for the interview because they see potential in you, which is very good. So trust in yourself. You probably already got what the job needs. So be positive about yourself. And knowing that, and focusing on that in your mindset before um, the interview can make a big difference. And that is something that I advise everybody to be conscious of, and to be more positive, and to basically have more trust and faith in themselves, and be confident as well. And again, that leads to preparation, to rehearsing, to writing down, and practicing the questions and the answers. And that's all, things that will drive your confidence. And of course, staying calm during the interview is important. And that's something that I feel, again, comes from preparation. So it's confidence versus nervousness, and smiling versus, sometimes even now I'm looking at myself and I can see that, like I'm very animated, very serious. And okay, that could come across, as serious and professional, of course, but there's no harm in smiling. It does send good subconscious vibes, I would say. And as we said, too much confidence is bad for you because it stops you from preparing. But I think good or adequate preparing will give you confidence. So try to make preparation, or adequate or proper preparation, drive your confidence levels, not the other way around. Right. We are now exactly an hour. We are an hour. I wanted to talk about the phases of the interview, but let's see if we have. Well, let's leave the questions till the end, and I'll talk about the phases of the interview. And I mentioned something that I was gonna forget, but hopefully I remember it, which was during the intro and the first part of the interview. The mistake people make is that they waste that opportunity to make a strong impression, memorable impression in the first 30 seconds or so. And let me explain how you can do that. If you know about the interviewer, you could research interviewers before the interview and try to find something that is relevant and maybe something they could find relatable to in your experience, and mention that in a good way, in a positive and a happy way. Maybe it's an icebreaker. Maybe, I would, for example, if I'm interviewed by somebody who's worked in the Middle East, okay, I would basically refer to that stage in my career and say, like yourself, I've worked in the Middle East. So that helps with a bit of a personal connection, if you like. So, again, the first phase is about getting quick wins for you, establishing like a connection, maybe say a story of yourself. Don't go and say fiction or whatever, but talk about a good story of your career. Try to think of a good story of your career, how it developed, how it went through. These are all aspects that people make the mistake of just basically missing out on that opportunity. And another one is the second phase is when the interviewer, usually that's how it goes, but the interviewer would basically introduce the role and the organization to you. And again, you have to practice or try to know how to appear as actively listening. You could basically not interrupt, but always make sure that you have read the job description and studied it well enough for the interview, know enough about the organization and the role. Because, again, some interviews, we ask people, have you read the job description? And they will say, no. Have you not been sent it? Yeah, we have been sent it, but you haven't read it. So it can be very, very, surprising. But people make these mistakes. I see them all the time. And the next phase, which is the main bulk of the interview, is the interview dialogue or the questions and answers. And this is where, again, the mistake is mostly around two things, as we said. The first one is not preparing the right answers. And trust me, I'm going to repeat it again. Most engineers who come to interviews are very competent. They know their stuff. They're very experienced. They've got the skill sets. But you can only give the job to the person who articulates the best about their experience and leaves the right impressions and answers the questions adequately. So prepare your examples and focus, of course, on what's important and what's relevant and what's, the right level of detail. And the second thing is don't stop short. So if you're answering a question, make sure that you have answered it well to the point before stopping. Because sometimes people can just, out of nervousness or maybe out of lack of preparation, can just basically stop short. And that just gives like an impression of, okay, they don't know about it, or at least they cannot talk about it. Right. And it is, stopping short is also a mistake that people make that basically diminishes their opportunities in getting more and more into the interview about their experience, about their skill set. If you mention the story about, like I say, so not a story, but if you mention an example from a project that you've delivered successfully on time, then maybe if you feel like you're stopping, well, the next sentence should be the challenges that you faced and how you overcame them. Okay. The interfaces you managed, the people, the different people you worked with, the challenging timelines you worked within, etc., etc. So there is always things to talk about and highlight and bring across as a candidate to add to your strength of your profile. And of course, the last part is the questions and the outro. So you would be basically asked, maybe in some cases, okay, some personnel questions. So if you're asked about salary, you got to be prepared. You got to have your research done before the interview. And, these are the questions that are in the end. So I wouldn't expect, for example, somebody at the end of the interview to ask a completely fundamental question about the role that tells me they don't understand the job description, for instance. So, these are things that perhaps you need to think about. And the mistake of not thinking about is also getting you into that, trap of, coming across as unprepared. And then the last phase, of course, are your questions, and we said that. But you're free to ask any questions you ask about the organization, the team that you are supposedly going to be working within, and amongst other things you want to ask about as an interview. Because remember, again, this is another mistake. People think that the interview is for them, but it's actually also you interviewing, the people that you're going to be working with. So if they are not the right people to work with, you wouldn't be wanting to work with them. So ask the questions that also help you form an idea about the organization you're stepping in, about the people you're going to be working with, about the routes for growth within the organization, what new skills and exposures you're going to be able to pick up and learn and develop as being in the organization. Right. And let's get to the live questions again. If you have any questions, we've got a couple of minutes, so please write down any questions you might have before we call it a day. Okay, we've got another question here. I have a bit of experience in venture capital. From India, I pursued Masters of Finance and Investment during the pandemic. I tried hard to break into venture capital. However, even for internship or unpaid roles, I've been rejected. How do I gain UK market experience with zero exposure? Okay, so I'm not an expert on venture capital, unfortunately. But what I could tell you is perhaps I could have a go at the second question, which is how do I gain UK market experience with zero exposure? As we said, for early, and for early or entry level engineers and fresh graduates, you gotta first of all find your career liaison within the university you're studying in. And that's usually a person who has the connections with the industry, with the different companies, who could actually help you with placements within these industries, within these companies, because companies will go to universities and ask them for, engineers and students, engineering students whom they recommend for placements. So there's a lot of that going on. And the second thing you could do is, as I said earlier, you could network with early careers manager. What you could do on LinkedIn is very easy now to search and find people on LinkedIn. You could write the company's name with early careers manager as the job title and find that person. And go back to the recording. I've explained how to approach people, etc. Respect their time, respect their privacy. If you're following up, follow up politely and professionally. Because people who want to help people like us are there. There are people who want to help people, and there are people who are just browsing and viewing the platform. So leave them alone. So find the people who want to really help or looking or have opportunities, and network with them in the right manner. Okay. Another thing is keep applying and keep learning. That's just as simple as that. People tell me they apply like hundreds of times, and then when you get into the detail of it, you'll find that they basically just pressed send and send. Well, that's not really, like a proper application. You have to go through, thinking about the cover letter, thinking about messaging the recruiter. There is a better process of actually applying and putting through a meaningful and proper job application rather than just, you know, throwing copies of your CV out everywhere. Okay, and best of luck. Um, but I know nothing about venture capital. I'm sorry. Is it a good idea of giving excuses regarding language or job or anything? Excuses. Okay. So, language. So, yeah, I mean, I give excuses. I use that excuse all the time. I say English is my second language. And, I try to use that excuse all the time, every day. But joking aside, yeah, you could always say, look, well, I would say be confident and practice. And again, learn. Everybody learned. Like those who speak two or three languages, how did they do it? They learned and practiced. Okay. So that's one thing that perhaps you need to work on if you are targeting jobs within a different country who speak a different language, or just, to gain that, professional and international exposure. And look, um, I speak two languages. I envy people who speak three. I know a little bit of words in French, maybe, so that doesn't count as a third language. But look, I've always wanted to learn a third language. There is no problem in giving excuses, but you don't need to. You don't need to explain yourself. If I talk really fast or in an accent, for example, that probably makes you not understand something, you could always ask, politely and ask me to repeat. And, I've never had the problem doing that here. I've always said, like, pardon me, or could you please repeat that again? There's nothing wrong with that. And excuses regarding job, there is no excuse regarding a job. I mean, I'll give you an example. Someone might apply and they're working on something unrelated to engineering. You know, I'm I don't think I ever ask about that because I know that people who are actually, so let's say you're in between jobs, you could be working something else. You could be all sorts, people working Uber or Amazon, or whatever. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And there is no excuse. As a matter of fact, it shows that you are an active person. It shows that you are a person who wants to always be earning a living, working. You're reliable, you're dependent. So it shows good traits. It doesn't show anything negative. So I don't think excuse is the right word. And that's my opinion. Or anything. I don't know. I don't know what you're. Do you have something specific? You could ask a more specific question. But other than that, there is, I don't think, any need to give excuses for anything. You don't need to explain anything to anybody unless, it is something relevant and something that is fair to be asked about. Okay. So also know what you want to be answering and what you cannot be answering. Can we say sorry if we do not know the answer of the interviewer question? Of course. You could say, sorry, could you repeat that again, please? There's nothing wrong with that. And you could always also try to repeat the question yourself. So if I say, I don't know, can you, tell me about an instant where you have had to deal with a difficult challenge? What sort of actions did you immediately take and how did you overcome it eventually? And you could say, so you're asking about a challenge that I have taken immediate actions on, and So you could repeat word for word or in your own way just to acknowledge. And that's part of active listening, actually, repeating something to acknowledge the receipt of the message, and that you understand what the question in the interview is. And there's nothing wrong with that, Norman. Okay, thank you for your question. Okay, any other questions? If not, I would really like to call it a day. As always, I'm very happy to see new people asking me questions and interacting with the lives and the content, which is brilliant. And thank you so much. You can watch my other videos on these topics and other topics in detail on Substack. Please keep learning. Please stay curious. It's the best way to grow and develop. Career progression is a series of small steps and small actions that we could take equipped with the enough level of knowledge. Nobody knows everything, so no one can claim they know everything, and there are no single ways to carry out these actions, or there's no one right way. There are many right ways to do things, so try different things and see what works for you, and take advice, cautiously within the context. There's a lot of advice out there, but make sure that you think about the advice within the relevant context to your circumstance. And if you enjoyed this session and want to learn more, please give me the thumbs up or comment interested in the comment section, and I'll send you further resources. I've got a checklist, as a promise, of course, always, so people who stay till the end with me, and I've got a checklist that I can share with you. So if you write in the comments interested or checklist, I will send you the link for the free checklist so that you could use it before your next interview. And we've discussed some mistakes today and how to avoid them. Having the right positive mindset, importance of not wasting your first impression or the opportunity for the first impression, importance of you preparing your answers and getting into that flow, and the importance of rehearsing and practicing, and these and we've covered many mistakes today. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have, and you can go back to this recording anytime on my Substack, where I write a weekly newsletter and share weekly articles and resources and videos like these with my readers and with my subscribers and people who support me like you. Thank you so much. And before we go, thank you again. But I need your help, so please comment below. If you can tell me in the comments what you want me to talk about in my next live, what subject do you want me to talk about? Leave any comments or suggestions below. And as always, keep your questions coming. Thank you so much. Until we meet next time. And I don't know what to say, but happy Friday tomorrow. And